Okay, good evening and welcome again to yet another episode of this shiur, Baruch Hashem. So this week, for the third time in 4 weeks, I think we have a double parsha.
Yeah. Another double parsha.
Gets us through Vayikra fairly rapidly, but it makes it a little bit hard to keep up if you're going to be learning the parsha with different mefarshim and everything, but we do what we can. So Har Bechukosai, there are lots of different things that we can talk about, and I always mention the hardest thing is to figure out what to talk about. So we're not going to talk about Parshas Bahar at all. It's basically about Eretz Yisrael and Shemitah in particular, and Yovel, a lot of important things there. And Parshas Bechukosai, the main part of it is the tochacha. I actually wrote an article, so when I send out the shiur, I'll attach the article which I wrote about that. Be that as it may, and I think we're going to go with right at the beginning of Parshas Bechukosai. So, Parshas Bechukosai, most of it is about basically the blessings and the curses. If you do good things, things will go well. If you don't do good things, things won't go well, etc. So we're just going to look at the first two psukim. And this is based on a shiur I heard one of my rebbeim many years ago. And this on the left side at the top, the big parsha begins, Im bechukosai telechu, right? If you walk with my, how do you call chukosai? My laws, my statutes. Ves mitzvosai tishmeru, and you do my mitzvos. Va'asisa mosam, and you do them. What will happen? A whole list of various blessings. It starts with Nasati Gishmechem Be'itam. The rains will come in their time. Nasna Haaretz Yivula, the land will give its produce. Eitza Sadeh Yitain Piryo, and the trees will give their fruit. Yisig Lachem Daishes Batzir Sigazara, the harvest from the beginning till the end will last, and we have plenty of food. V'achaltem lachmechem lasova, and you'll be able to eat your food and be satisfied. V'yishavtem lavetach b'artzachem, and you shall live in security in your land. A big bracha, right? We said we can learn today. Okay. So the first pasuk is a little bit of a difficult pasuk from Pshat. In bechukosai telechu, v'es mitzvosai tishmoru v'asisa. Right? If you go, it seems a little bit redundant. You didn't have to, what does it say? Do the chukim and the mitzvos and the mishpah and do them. So he seems to do three things at the same time. And of course, Rashi talks about that. So Rashi, in the next box below it says, he says, Michukosei telechu, Yochol zekim mitzvos. I might think that doing the chukos means doing the mitzvos. But then it says, Kishu omer ves mitzvosei tishmoru. Right? It says in the next few words, and you keep the mitzvos. Harikiyah mitzvah somewhere, that's taken care of. So what's bechukosai telechu, right? Shetihiyu amelim b'Torah, right? I'm sorry, the last word was kasaf. You're supposed to be amelim b'Torah. Actually, Rabbi Storch asked me tonight, so what are you going to talk about? So I said, I'm going to talk about having amelim b'Torah. He said, uh-oh. I think he's worried about what I have to say about that topic. But because that Rashi is a very famous Rashi in the yeshiva world, right? The main thing of doing it is they should be amelim b'Torah. What does amelim b'Torah mean? The usual way of understanding. Amelim means work, to labor at Torah, not just to, as they say, proverbially a person wants to sit in their armchair and, spend 4 hours, maybe, and one night finish Shas and sleep half of that night. Doesn't work that way. If a person wants to master Torah, you have to work at it. You have to be busy. What?
Bechukosai then is being
Amelim b'Torah. That's the famous first Rashi. Okay, but it's not Pashut, right? Why? Because then it says further that mitzvosai tishmoru v'asisa mosam, you should do them. So the next Rashi says, that usually is not as quoted as much in the yeshiva world. It says, what does it mean? It's mosmashei tishmoru, it's messed up a little bit there. Having a amelim b'Torah al manas lishmor l'kayim. Why should you be amel b'Torah? In order to observe the Torah, in order to do the mitzvahs, as it says, right? V'asisa mosam, you should do them. And it says, V'limadatem osam, Mushmartem v'la'asosam, a pasuk in Devarim, that you should learn them and to do them. In other words, And that gets to the whole discussion, which I'm not going to get into here, is the main purpose of Torah in order to, what does it mean? It's supposed to be learning Torah lishma, right? What does that mean? Does that mean doing it for its own sake? So if you have actually learning Torah in order to know what to do, or learning Torah in order to, for any other, certainly ulterior motive, that's wrong. Or are you supposed to just learn Torah, even the parts of Torah that have little or nothing to do with anything lamaisa, practically in your life? Like for instance, in Daf Yomi, for the past few months, we've been learning Zvachim and Menachos. That Menachos has a little bit more. It has some of the mitzvahs, tefillin and talis, but most of Menachos and Zvachim are about in the base of Mikdash. Well, we hope that it will be lamaisa soon, but right now, there's very little to do with our actual lives. How to bring a mincha, how to bring a korban, etc. What?
More to you than to us.
As a kohen, yes, but even for me, it's hopefully a bit more practical. Though, as you know, I think they're going to put me in the worm room.
We have to know it so that we can, in case when it's available. We can do it.
Yeah. Okay. So of this, but that's true. But let's say there are other mitzvahs, like for instance, in the yeshiva world, you spend a lot of time in Maseches Yevamis, right? Very hard, difficult Masechta, long Masechta. And what you need to know actually in order to be Mekayim Yevamis in any practical case, you can probably learn within an hour or two at the most. And most of Yevamis is about things that will never happen. First of all, the cases are all kinds of, if you're familiar, if it's like that country western song about my daddy is my son, right? My own grandpa, right? All these very convoluted cases of three sisters who married two brothers who had all kinds of, and besides, there is no yibum today. We don't do yibum. We just do, right? It's a classic. It's straight from Yavamis. Anyway, even if you had such a case, we don't do yibum today. We do chalitza. And anyhow, my point is learning Torah about things that have no practical, application. Are they called Torah lishma? So, certainly Rashi seems to say, certainly Rav Hirsch held, and I think most of Chazal held, the main purpose of learning Torah is that you should know what to do. So that's to learning it lahalacha. That's the best thing. Anyhow, okay. So that's what Rashi says about that. What does he say? He continues, and he says you should do it bi'itam, right? Then if we do that, so what would you expect if we learn Torah for the proper ways and we work at Torah? So you would think you would get some kind of spiritual reward. You'll become a big Talmid Chacham. You'll get the honor in the community. You'll learn Olam Haba. I don't know. That's not what it says. And what do you get as a result? The rain comes. Okay, thank you. Right, the rain comes and the crops grow and the fruit grows. And one could ask, first of all, it's not so spiritual. Second of all, I would think it seems to me in most of the world today those things happen also, even for people who are not such big Talmidei Chacham. They also get rain and etc. What is that about? So Rashi says be'itam. It says something interesting. He says, one is be'itam, I'll bring the rain in its time. What does it mean in its time? He says, b'sha'ah she'ein derech be'adam latzeis, kigon b'leilei shabbosos. It's supposed to be a big bracha if it rains Friday night, unless you're a guest. What? What?
I would feel bad for the yeshiva bachrim. We're sitting at home, it's raining, we're like,
yeah.
8 o'clock, and they're like, oh, see you guys.
And they have to walk back home. Okay, they're young, it's okay. But that's considered to be a better time for it to rain than a time, obviously, it's less convenient. In other words, it's something we need, that late at night is the time. That's be'itam. Okay. And furthermore, what's the Eitza Sadeh Yitain Piryo? Ilane Sra. So these non-fruit-bearing trees, Asidin Lasos Peris. They're going to have fruit someday. So someday you're going to have birch fruit and pine fruit. I guess. Real pineapples, I guess. You're going to have that. That's going to be the schar. Okay, very nice. But what's going on over here? What is happening with the how do we understand what this means? So if we flip into the other side a little bit, in source number 3 over there, that's a little bit of a quote from the Or HaChaim. If you know the Or HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar was one of the great Mefarshim in the Mikvaros Gedolos, and one of the longest sections that he has in the whole Torah is on the first pasuk of Parshas Bechukosai. He says over there it says V'dibarta bum. You should speak about the Torah, right? So what's bum gematria? Easy one, 42, right? 42. So he has 42 commentaries on what it means in Bechukosai Telechu, right? And he ends by saying, I would have said more, but they didn't let me say it min hashamayim. Whatever that means, right? So the second, I think, one that he says, Od yirtzeh, al derech masha amru, about you could understand with Bechukosai Telechu about what they said on the pasuk. Chishafti derachai. How does the rest of the pasuk go? Lasos vashiva raglai al edvosecha. Right. It's from Tehillim Kuf Yutes, from the 119th chapter of Tehillim. Who, if you're familiar with it, that's the one in which there are 8 psukim. Right, 8 psukim goes through the aleph beis, 8 aleph psukim, 8 beis psukim, 8 gimel psukim. Sometimes when they have a yortzeit or something, they read those psukim and spell out the name. Right, and all of those psukim, every one of those 8 times 22, which is, I don't know.
8 times 22.
Yeah.
176.
176. Okay. So thank you. Yeah, quick. So 8. So if 8 times, so he has 176 psukim, and every one of them is about the importance of Torah, and how important the goodness of Torah, and how central Torah is. I always think of one time that it was read very interestingly when Meir Kahana, Hashem Yikom Damo, was elected to the Knesset. So every new Knesset member gets to give a speech when they first get elected. You know, and when he came up for his first speech, that was one time, which almost like all his speeches, half the Knesset walked out when he spoke, or more. Sometimes almost everybody walked out. So they tried, ultimately, well, they ostracized him and eventually found, by calling him a racist, they made it illegal for him to run for the Knesset, whatever. But anyway, his inaugural speech was reading Tehillim Kuf Yutes. I'm going to devote myself to the Torah. I thought it was a good use of that. So he says, I'm gonna try and best. I'm gonna make my way. I'm gonna think about it, but my way will be for Torah. So what does the Or HaChaim say about that? Shahaya David, right? David's the author of Tehillim. Choshev lasos inyanim. He was thinking about doing things, whatever. He was busy with his business, and what happened? Raglov molichin oso me'atzma al beis hamedrash. He found his feet were walking to the beis medrash, even though he was perhaps had other plans when he left the house. Where you going, honey? Playing golf? I don't know. He's ended up in the beis medrash, right? Why? Levrov hachefetz v'haratzon v'haregilus badavar, because he had such a deep desire and such a will, and he was so used to coming into learning and being in the beis medrash. Right, he ended up finding himself. Chashafti drachai. I thought about my ways. I was going to go somewhere, and I ended up el edvosecha. I ended up being in the shul. And Har Chaim is saying that's pshat. V'hu amro. That's pshat in Bechukosai Telechu. If you go with my chukim. Pirush. What does that mean? Halichaschem me'atzma ki achareha. Your natural way will be to go towards Torah. Kimamar David larov hacheshik v'haregilos. Because, like David said, because of the great familiarity he had with it and the great desire he had with it, and that, in other words, what he's saying perhaps is amelim b'Torah. You could say it like in the more yeshivish way, means, I say with yeshiva they would say kvetching on a taisus and a lumdus or whatever, or it can mean that anything that I work with, right, I'm going to be doing with Torah, and interestingly, that Torah is going to be something that's going to become part of a natural thing for me that I have this desire to do, and so much so that there's a famous Chazal that said Gemara and Brachos that says that 3 things are niknin b'yisurin, 3 things you get only through difficulty. What are they? What? Well, kind of. Eretz Yisrael, yes. Eretz Yisrael, Torah, and Olam Haba. Those three things that we can come through Yisur. Now, of course, you can get them throughout Yisur, but there's an inyan to get it with Yisur. There's, that some say not only that you have to go through Bituach Lumi to get to Eretz Yisrael, but that in a way, if you do it, even not just when it's easy, but when you want to do it, when you really push yourself to do it, that's when you really get there. Okay? So the idea that we're going to explore tonight is basically that in general, the things that we do in life, and particularly those three things, and particularly Torah and Eretz Yisrael, and clearly the bracha, right? We asked before that the bracha that, if you keep the Torah, then you will get a bracha, right? It wasn't about this, it was about the land. The land will give you the rain on the time and the produce and the things that you want. And by the way, I mentioned, I'm not going to talk about Parshas Bahar, but Parshas Bahar with Shemitah and how much important Shemitah is, and that's the mitzvah of all mitzvahs that talks about our relationship to Eretz Yisrael, right? And how important Eretz Yisrael is. Again, I said I was going to talk about it, but just in a sentence, if one had to pick, what is perhaps the most difficult mitzvah that we have to be B'kayim? Maybe women would say covering their hair. I don't know. Maybe I heard that recently from somebody. What?
Agriculturally based, that must be
But
very difficult.
it's agriculture. But it's, imagine, whatever it is that you do for a living, you have to, for a whole year, you can't do it, and you have to just rely that God will provide. Some people find that easy to just rely somebody else is going to provide, but what? It takes a lot of Mesiras Nefesh and a lot of Yiras Shamayim to do it seriously, and we do it because it ties us very much to Eretz Yisrael and appreciating Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so I don't want to talk so much about Shemitah now, but clearly this follows upon that, and the whole Parshas Bechukosai is if you do them, basically you live securely in the land, the land will produce you, the land will be good for you, and then later in the Tochacha, which we're not talking about, all kinds of bad things will happen, but the first and most important thing is we'll go into Golus. We will lose Eretz Yisrael, right? And that we'll be exiled from it, and then the land. In fact, it even says one of the psukim, the land will then rest for all those times you didn't let it rest during Shemitah. It'll take those over. Many other things. Okay, but the point is that that when we talk about these things, Torah and Eretz Yisrael, and in general in life, you can do the things that we do in life. We could do in one of two ways. We could do them because you got to do them, you have to do them, all right, or because you want to do them, or because you feel like it's a privilege to do them, because you feel that you're called to do them, that it's a great, even a pleasure to do them. And how we approach these things makes a huge difference. We could look at, we spoke about that last week. You could look at davening, as something, okay, all right, I gotta get minhag done, so I'll get it over with. You have to do this, you have to do that. Or you can look at the time that you have to daven as the most precious time that you have, that you look forward to, that you wish you had more time to daven, except certain people. That is it something that we want to do, or is it something that we have to do? Is Torah something that we have to, or we want it? Eretz Yisrael. Do we have it because we had to go there or not? This becomes, I think, particularly interesting and important in terms of our relationship with Eretz Yisrael. Everybody sitting in this room is an oleh, is somebody who chose to come and live in Eretz Yisrael. And I think we've all run into Israelis who think we're nuts, right? Why would you leave America to come and live here? Are you out of your mind, right? Right. Well, I'm not even talking about the, with family, the leaving behind, though that's of course a big part of it. But just the comforts, the big home, the easier to make a living, all this stuff. We leave it. Now we feel, we have that. Shouldn't rub it in.
Free sliced hot dog.
Right. They had all kinds of things. It's gotten easier. I remember when I moved to Israel, the thing I missed was peanut butter. You couldn't get good peanut butter here. And you could get all kinds. You couldn't get hamburgers here. But now you can get all these things. But still, of course, it makes a big difference. So it's changed a lot. But you have to realize most Israelis, at least, came here not because they chose to come here, they wanted to come here. Many of them there was no other place to go.
They were kicked out.
They were kicked. Yeah, they were survivors. They were after the Holocaust. They had nowhere else to go. They were in the Sephardic lands. They were kicked out of all those lands. They came here not because they desired it, or because they chose it. And they came because of hechrach. How do you say that in English? In one word, necessity, I guess. Right?
No choice.
No choice. So, do they get schar for living in Eretz Yisrael? Of course. Is it the same as somebody who chooses to come here? And how should we feel about those things? So I think that's an interesting question that I wanted to explore here, and look at some interesting things. What?
Is that what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yes. That's what we're going to talk about.
It's scary when he says that, yeah.
That's what we're getting to. What we are talking about at this late point in the game. All that was an interesting introduction to it, and that to be argued that's what the Orach Chaim is talking about, what Rashi is talking about. Bechukosai that you want to go, that you look to go towards the Torah. You're looking to do it, into becoming it, making it part of your life, not just having to do it. And to look at that, there's three, but really mainly two very interesting sources here that I don't know if you're familiar with, that I thought were very exciting. The first comes from the Sefer Eim Habanim Smecha. Okay, that was written by Rav Teichtal, I think. Rav Teichtal was a very fascinating figure. Short break here because I didn't present Rav Teichtal correctly when I was giving the shiur. Rav Yisachar Shlomo Teichtal, born in 1885, was a remarkable figure. He grew up first in Hungary and then moved to Czechoslovakia. He was a Tzanzer Chassid. He received smicha from the Rav of Eli Sheva, then several other smichas, and in 1921 became the Av based in Rav of Pishtian, and was there for 20 years, eventually establishing yeshiva there as well. In 1938, when he was living in Pishtian, the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia, and he was hiding with 10 other families at a local base medrash, and it witnessed many atrocities, including the mass deportation of his friends and neighbors. The chief Rav of Slovakia, who was in Nitra, sent messages and offered him the opportunity to go to Hungary. And he went there and he hid in Nitra, and he was there for a while. In Budapest for 2 years, that's where he wrote most of Eim Habanim Smecha, while observing what was going on around him. And then in 1944, he thought that maybe it was safe to go back to Slovakia, and he went there to wait the end of the war, but he was captured when they stepped up their efforts to find the few remaining Jews that they hadn't caught yet in Slovakia, and was captured and transported to Auschwitz. At the end of the war, when the Nazis closed Auschwitz and they put many of the Jews on trains deeper into Germany, he was on the way to Mauthausen. And then the following quote is from his son, Rav Chaim Menachem Teichtal, about the final episode of his life. After starving their victims for a number of days, the oppressors tossed each of them a meager crust of bread, with the evil intent of having them fight pathetically for their paltry allotment. Indeed, one of the Ukrainians grabbed the portion of a Jew who was desperate for this crust of bread. This angered my father, who demanded the return of the theft. The other travelers begged my father not to get involved, since it might cost him his life, but he said, "How can I stand by when the wronged man's life depends on this food?" He insisted on taking a stand, and the Ukrainians, with the cooperation of the Nazi soldiers, rose against him and killed him after torturing him mercilessly. Hashem yikom damo, zecher tzadik livracha. So he grew up basically in Hungary, and Hungary was a place where most of the Rabbanim were very opposed to Zionism, most famously the Satmarov, and that's the way he grew up until a little bit later in life. Satmar Rebbe didn't pick up his anti-Zionism in Brooklyn, right? He held that way long before. that Zionism was a bad thing, and it was, in fact, he held very extreme views about it. He felt that, even to the point that part of the reason the Holocaust happened was because of the Zionist thing. We won't discuss that now, but he was very, very anti-Zionist. That's no secret to anybody here, right? And he was a big goyin, a big tzaddik, etc. But that's what he held. And Rav Teichtel grew up in that hashkafa, in that atmosphere. But then, as he saw things, going downhill in Europe in the 30s, and he saw what was happening, and he saw different opportunities, he changed his thoughts about it.
Wow.
And he decided, we have an opportunity now to go back to Eretz Yisrael. What are we, nuts? We're staying here in Europe, right? We're not taking advantage. Look at the great opportunity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving to us to come to Eretz Yisrael. And he devoted himself for the next few years to trying to change the opinion of a lot of people and to get them excited about the possibility of moving to Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't mean he became a Zionist at all.
Right. No.
But he felt that, this is a tremendous blessing. And that's, I think, the way all of us need to think about, whether you're more religiously Zionist or less religiously Zionist. I think anybody who's a serious Torah Jew, right, of course, the primary thing that our connection with Eretz Yisrael isn't Herzl. It's the tremendous gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, that we're able to come and live in Eretz Yisrael. It was something that our ancestors, our Bubis and Zaydis and all the generations, we've given anything just to be here for 5 minutes. And we take so many things for granted, even with Bituach Lumi, and even with the problems, and even with all the various annoying things that go on, and there are annoying things, right? But it's such an incredible blessing that we have to be here, and we need to think about that and appreciate it. And Rav Teichtel devoted himself, and he wrote this amazing book, which, by the way, I thought about maybe sometime people might want to have a seder in learning it, because it's just full of love of Eretz Yisrael and appreciation of being in Eretz Yisrael, and how fortunate we are to be in Eretz Yisrael. It's a good thing to go through. And he himself was killed by the Nazis in a concentration camp. He did not make it here, but his book made it, so to speak, and important sefer to read. So let's just look at this part here. It's hard to read. This is number 4. Okay. He says, Hine Isa b'Magen Avram in Shavuos Tav. He's quoting the Magen Avram in the laws of having to do with Shavuos. This is not oaths, but actually the holiday of Shavuos. He says, Hatam sha'anu neurim belel Shavuos. Why do we stay up all night, the night of Shavuos? Right? Big, it's a minhag of Klal Yisrael to stay up and learn, and there's a lot of discussion about why do we do that. After all, especially here in Eretz Yisrael, I know Shoshana, you complained about that a lot of times on Shavuos, if here you stay up all night, you sleep all day, and it's over. Eat a little cheesecake, This year we get to have a second day, so to speak, because Shavuos is on a Friday. But it's but why do we stay up all night? And there are different opinions, right? One of the opinions is because so the main idea was because, as he says, the takein mashakilkulu avoseinu az b'matan Torah, that we want to be misakein, we want to fix what they messed up by matan Torah. Why? Sheyashnu balayla hazeh, because the night before Shavuot of the matan Torah, they went to sleep. They should have been so excited, right, that they were going to get the Torah the next day. How could you sleep? And that was a kitrug against them, that Moshe had to, so to speak, wake them up and get them out there in the morning. So therefore, in order to fix that, we stay up all night. That's how does that work is a little different. I heard from Rabbi Braun once, an interesting shot, right? He said that, how does it work? Because if, I think I'll say this quickly, if you look at the typical shul, yeshiva, right? So for the night before, we daven Marav late, because Sheva Shabbos Tzimimos, we want to have Sfiras Omer all the way till no early Shabbat, right? So we start late, and we get this, and we have a festive Yontif davening, and then we come home. Maybe let's get home, maybe 9, 10, whatever, and you begin the meal. But that's okay, you got all night anyway, right? Right? So you enjoy the meal, this, that, right? Finally, you decide you roll over into shul maybe midnight, right? If you're lucky, midnight, then you got to go and see who's there and catch up on the news. And, right? You sit down finally till you sit down to learn. Get your first coffee, right? Got to sit down to learn, and you sit down to learn at maybe 1:45 or so, right? Okay, so you learn. You have your chavrusa, and then you learn. Let's say for an hour, right? If you're doing well. And then, of course, already you need your second cup of coffee, right? And go back, and there's usually a nice thing, and there's some nice cheesecakes, and there's this, etc. And then you get to 20 minutes, or whatever, you have to, are you milchik, are you not milchik, right? Right? So get back, and then you learn for another 40 minutes, and then you need your second coffee, and more, and then there's an interesting discussion, and then you come back again, and by then you don't have koich till you've learned the hard stuff, so you're learning something easier, and then the question comes, who's going to say brachas, and all kinds of discussions. If you live in Yerushalayim, what are you doing at that time, by the way? Start walking to the kotel, right? A lot of people do daven shmunas in Shavuos morning, right? Right? And then you do that, and then the davening is a hard, half the people are asleep during Pesukei Zimra, right? During that, etc. During the maftir, like usually the only two people awake are the person reading it and the rabbi. Baby, I had this. I learned this the hard way because, in their infinite wisdom, the first time I stayed up for this night, they gave me the Torah to hold during the Haftorah. And thank God my machzor made a loud noise when it fell on the floor and woke me up before I dropped the Sefer Torah.
Somebody told me
Right?
to read Akdamos. Is that
What? And they read Akdamos, right? Oh, sure. They read Akdamos. And you say Yizkor in Eretz Yisrael, right? Some crazy people even read Megillah, Rus in the mornings. Many people read it later, right? So it's and then the davening, and then they sleep, and then they're tired for the next 3 days. So question is, we do all those things. How is that misakein, right? How's that making up to fixing what we did wrong on Shavuos night? So Rabbi Braun said it's very simple. God, you didn't want us. You said we should have stayed up all night. Okay, we'll do it your way. And we proved they were right to go to sleep. I don't know, a bit of a cynical view, but the truth is, it's a night of it really is. Even with all that having been said, in truth, if you do it right, the Shavuos night is usually a very special holy night, and people learn, etc. Okay, but so he says, how is that? So he says we're misakin. Now he says an interesting point in this. Says at the end of the second line there, v'hine, and let's think about this. Imal kilkul kal kazeh. If for such a small thing that they did wrong, hinhigu av rabosenu l'sakin zos, our rabbi said you have to fix it, right? And that's something that all the generations have to remember. Al achas kama v'kama, all the more so, she'aleinu l'takein kilkul rav, that we have to fix a much bigger kilkul. And this is said, basically, he brings this down on Parshas Shlach, on the Indian of the Meraglim, right? What happened with the Meraglim, as we all know, right? The Meraglim went, and they came back with this terrible report about Eretz Yisrael, and as a result, etc. Okay, and we have to fix it. Asher kol chayenu, right? We have to fix this. Asher kol chay, if that thing they did that Shavuos night needed fixing, certainly the Meraglim incident was much more severe. And that's something we should do today also, to think about that. Asher kol chayenu v'kvodenu v'kavod Hashem Yisbarach v'kvod Torasenu HaKedosha v'kvod Malchus Beis David, the honor of all those things, v'kvod Artzenu HaKedosha, and the covet of our holy land, right? Teluyabo, though it's all dependent on it. Al-Kain, therefore, Baruch Hashem, it's as clear as the sun, to anybody who wants to admit the truth. She'ein lanu eitza acheres, we have no other eitza, latseis mimamadenu hara hazeh, and we have to get out of the attitude that we have, sha'anu bo kalpaim shana, that we've been stuck in the last 2,000 years. Biglal because we had this bad thing that came on us, in other words, the galus, right? We have to get rid of it. We have to leave it. We have to go back, right? We have to think we're going back to Eretz Yisrael. It's a terrible thing that we're not in Eretz Yisrael. We have to try to do what we can to come out of that. And then and when we're able to rip up this IOU we have, so to speak, from us, Neitzei Bes Hashem in the Golus, then we'll be able to go out of the Golus, from the long Golus, V'nashuv ben Kavod me'artzenu HaKedushah, and we'll be able to come back in honor to our holy land. So he's saying, we have to want it. We have to want to come back to Eretz Yisrael, right? And this is something that, throughout the Golus, a lot of, I think we mentioned a couple of times, even going back to the Bayis Rishon, many people were faulted for not wanting to go back from Bavel at the time, right? But then throughout, one famous example was the Kuzari lived, in the 12th century, 13th century, something like that, I'm not sure exactly, the golden age of Spain, right? And he wrote, some of the most beautiful things written about Eretz Yisrael were written by Yehuda Halevi, especially the great poem about Eretz Yisrael, which we read on Tisha B'Av, Tzion Halot Tishali L'Shlom HaSirach. It's incredibly heart-wrenchingly beautiful. Talks about our love for Eretz Yisrael and how much we're missing it. So in the Sefer Kuzari, he talks for a while about how important Eretz Yisrael is, and the Melech, the whole Kuzari is written as a conversation between the sage and the Melech. Asks him, all that's very, very nice, but tell me, excuse me, why are you doing here? Why are you not in Eretz Yisrael? Right? So, and he says basically, I have no good answer. I have no good answer. And he goes on with that, and he says that when most of us say Yerushalayim Yircha Barachavim Tashuv, etc., we're talking like a parrot. We're talking like we don't mean what we say, and it's our tremendous busha. He himself actually
welcome there.
Right? Well, he himself eventually went to Eretz Yisrael, and as the legend has it, he was right outside the gates of Jerusalem, was trampled to death when he got there. Okay, but But throughout the Golus, there were times that we could have gone, and many Jews did, right? As we'll see in a moment. So, but most Jews, unfortunately, through today, right, have all kinds of reasons why. Not the right place, not the right time. Yeah, sure, it'll come someday. And I don't know if Lonnie doesn't like it when I say it, but I wonder if Mashiach came tomorrow, would everybody from Lakewood move here? Would everybody from 5 towns move here, Passaic? Leave their nice big homes there and come move into an apartment here? I don't know. How much do we want? He's arguing we have to want it. We have to want it. That's to do something that will, just like they did with Shavuot night, all the more so to arouse this desire that just like they were saying they didn't want the Torah enough, that's they went to sleep the night before, right? We have to, as much as we can, we should try that we want to come to Eretz Yisrael, right? And he says a little bit more over here. Kamol l'gabi tikun Shavuos, like by Shavuos, shahatikun hu shanu mashlimim ato mash ita masha hayinu tzrichim lasot. We fix now what we should have done then, right? And to be up all night. Ulahachinat tzmeinu b'kishutei kala liyom chanusan. We should prepare ourselves like it should have been. We should have felt like a kala who the chassid is about to meet her at Shavuos, right? Hashem wanted to. Shir Hashirim is full of describing the Matan Torah, the time when the Dod and the Raya would come and be finally together. That's how they should have felt. They didn't go to sleep the night before. Kadosh Baruch Hu Yavo b'bris Erisin and Nesuin in Knesset Yisrael, right? And Shayinu mechasrin it. So we try to make it up. So again, he says, Aleinu, I'm just going to read the whole thing here. We have to try to do what we can to make it up, right? So he says, in the middle of the line, he says, "V'hine kvar heveti la'el b'shem haSefer Hakadosh Magid Meishorim LaMalach Shel Rabbeinu Beis Yosef." What's that about? There's an interesting book called the Magid Meishorim. It was written by the Beis Yosef, by Rav Yosef Karo, the Baal Shulchan Aruch. And it's about his conversations with a malach who would regularly visit him. If you go to Tzfat today, there's one place where there's a certain shul on the staircase. I know I have it in my mind where it is, but that's the place that he would come and regularly meet with this malach who would come and learn with him. But he would not only learn with him, but he talked about halachic topics, all sorts of things. And Agada topics too, and the Beis Yosef, you would look at him like like a very rational, very the practical, etc. But he was a big Bekubal too. I mean, he lived at that time in Tzfat with the at the same time as the Ariya Kodesh and the same time as other Shlomo Alka. That's
Could you not?
yeah, right. I heard once from Rav Shalom Shvadron, if I didn't hear it myself, I wouldn't repeat the story, but I heard it myself from him. He said that in that minyan, you can imagine, the Beis Yosef was the rabbi, the posek, right? The Ariya Kodesh was sort of the Rebbe, right? The Alshich was the darshan, the Rav Shlomo Alkabetz was the chazan, Rav Chaim Vital was I don't know who was the gabbai. I don't know who did the kedushas, but so the question came up: who do you wait for before beginning the chazan's repetition? Right, with such an all-star cat, right? Who do you wait for? So it became that they waited for the Beis Yosef. He was the biggest Talmid Chacham, and he had smicha. If you know, there's a whole story about how they try to renew the smicha at that time.
Right.
If you don't know the story, I'm not going to go into it now. But he had, so he was the Rav, right? So one time he was davening for a while, and he was taking a little bit longer than usual. And the Ari basically said, told the chazan, go ahead, right? Okay. And after davening, there's always a guy in the back of the shul who goes, Avrami loves to do that. So, right, so he says, go ahead. So after davening, the Ari banged on them. He said, I want to say something. I don't want anybody, chas v'sholom, to think that I was not holding by the covet of the Beis Yosef. Of course, we have to listen to wait for him while he's davening, but we have to wait for him when he's davening, when he's learning. I guess he knew he had gotten off into some.
He was off on a
Right. Yeah, I know what we all think about during our Shemona Esrei, but it's funny. He got distracted by some sugi he was in the middle of, I guess. Anyhow, so the Magid Meisharim, he was, that's who he was. So let's read it inside a little bit. He says, Hashem imach v'hinei b'Parshas Bechukosai, in this parsha, it's on the Meraglim, as the title says there. In this parsha,
What line are you on?
I'm right in the top line, right? So, second word, v'hinei b'Parshas Bechukosai ika l'meidak. About this parsha, you could ask, Amai ichtiv shlach lecha anashim. We find that's one of the questions in Parshas Shlach. It says in there's two versions of the Meraglim story in the Torah. One is in Parshas Shlach, and the other is in Parshas Devarim, right? In Parshas Shlach, it says Shlach lecha anashim, that Hashem said to Moshe, right? You should send Meraglim, right? Okay. The Mechse Kitavdidasa de Kodesh Baruch Hu. It looks like Hashem's idea. Mitzvahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Hebrew. Hu v'lo Yisra'usa de Yisrael, and it wasn't the idea of Yisrael. The ilu b'Mishnah Torah, but in Mishnah Torah, which is another way of saying Devarim, it says V'atikrivun elai kulchem, that you came to me with the idea, right, of sending Meraglim. So what was it? Whose idea was it? Was it God's idea? Was it the people's idea? Two different stories. Okay. V'su, that's question number one. Second, question number two. Amai havitzorech lelala ara, that why did they have to even go there and spy out the land? Kigavna deseidu sadal Moshe Rabbeinu. And when they were, first of all, why they spy it? Who needs it? And second of all, what kind of questions? Moshe said they should ask Hashmeinahi imraza. Is it fat or thin? In other words, is there a lot of nice fruits? Is there a lot of food? Etc. Right? Why is he asking that question? Right? To having michze, right? The mashma, that's mashma. The lo havishmeina. If it's not good, if the fruits aren't so big, then lo havisalkin. Maybe they wouldn't go. Eretz Yisrael. It seems like that was Moshe was asking only if they have certain, if it has really good customer service at Bituach Lumi.
People are not going to starve,
Right.
right? The people are not going to starve.
Right. So why is that important? Why did he ask that question? Right. Right. And first, Sue, in another question, Davi Michsi Da'al Moshe Rabbeinu to Usa Bilvavon, that Moshe Rabbeinu was almost introducing them to the possibility.
Suffolk?
The low lechmenu that they didn't believe that Kadosh Baruch Hu had already told them Hashem had promised them a good land, right? So and he's saying, well, let's check it out. Why is he asking them what to check it out, right? Why is Moshe sort of raising a doubt about the fact that Hashem had already promised them, right? These are questions that the Maggid asked the Malach, right? And he said, Visu and more, Amai Inshu, why were they punished? B'shvachad Eretz Yisrael Ishto. They said that it was a good land. And when and the fact that they said Azham Varim Mitzurah said that they're tough people there and they're fortified cities, right? And Moshe said even more so in Mishnah Torah. I'm not sure what he's referring to. Right? So what was so bad about what they said? Maybe because they said something bad. Right? There was that's part of the commentary. We'll get to that with Parshas Shlach. They didn't just give their news, but they gave the commentary, what their opinions about that the land. It's a land that eats its right. All these things. Moshe didn't say anything against that. Right? Okay, skipping a little bit to the line, the next paragraph. Alba Barira de Milsa, Kama Imra. It's very clear. Uvahachi is chayvan kamas feke. That we can and I can explain it to you in a way that you'll understand it. Halo lechala minda, you should know. The Yisrael de nesiu bekama nisyoine kamei kuchabrichu. At that point, the Meraglim, according to many, how many the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that there were 10 times. Right, that the Jewish people made Hashem, so to speak, upset in the Midbar. Starting with the Egel, and there was the Misonanim, and there was the Slav, and there was the this and that. With 10 ones, and the Meraglim was the 10th one. Although there were others as well, if that happened afterwards. But okay, that's so at that point already, they had messed up so many times, and they had already said so many times, "Why did you take us out of Egypt to bring us this place?" Hashem was willing to, say, what the heck with you guys, I'm not going to bring you into Eretz Yisrael, right? He's chayvu the lolig mailisar. They already had become chayav that they would not go into the land. Shaloli kanes laretz. However, because of seguya de rachmai v'chazadi b'liba, so because of Hashem's chesed, He gave them one more chance. What did He do? He wanted to do le'il bilvehon. He put into their hearts the yisba'un lemishlach guvran la'ala yisara, that they should. The fact that they asked to be able to send people into Eretz Yisrael was something that Hashem, sometimes influences us. They put ideas in their heads that they should want this, that they should want people there to check it out. Why did He do that? Right? The ihave zakayin behushlichosa kidikayos, and if it would have been successful. If they would have been zoche, they would have gone into the land with that schus, right? And basar hachi having mispara minay, and then Hashem would have dealt with the other things that kindness on them in other ways later on, put them on an installment plan, so to speak. But He would not have. He would have let them come into Eretz Yisrael. But if they had properly wanted Eretz Yisrael. If they express this desire, and that's why, and he says this later, right? He says, let's skip the next paragraph. Therefore, he says, for instance, "V'amar lahon Moshe," and Moshe said to them, "The yechson hashbeinahi." They should see, is it good? Are the fruits good? Does it taste good? Mishum the yada bevada hishmina. Moshe wasn't. He knew that it was good. He wasn't that he wanted to know that. But Rav Tova v'Yeshba'etz, he knew all those things. Why did he ask the Meraglim to check it out? Ramaz Ramizlin, he was trying to, if you will, subconsciously, or how do you say that by the power of suggestion? I'm not sure there's a way of saying that, right? To telling Meraglim, hey, this is what I want you to go and see the good things and bring back a good report. I want you to get people excited. What? Subliminal suggestion, okay. That he wanted to plant ideas in their heads This is what I want you to go there. Go there. It's look at. I want you to go look at all the beautiful fruits. Look at all the wonderful mountains. Look at how gorgeous it is. Look at this. And then he's hoping that they're going to come back with that, and people are going to get excited about it. He wanted to get people excited about how wonderful Eretz Yisrael is.
And that's how everything's going
What?
to turn out anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. But you ask that question about a lot of things. Okay. But that was he gave them the opportunity, they messed it up. But he gave them the opportunity, so to speak, that they should go there not because it was really necessary. It wasn't necessary, right? It wasn't necessary. I mean, that's one of the big questions of Parshas Shlach, right? What's the first thing Yehoshua does when he goes into Eretz Yisrael? He sends Meraglim, right? He said, but there he sent it for a very limited, particular purpose, just a Yericho, etc. Moshe didn't need that. Moshe, what he was trying to do, says the Maggid Misharim, he's trying to basically, it was a way of getting people to come in. And when they came and they didn't say this, and he said other things, then it got messed up, right, etc. And that was. And they said ki azam, etc., because they didn't want to go in, and that's a whole story about why didn't the Meraglim want to go in, etc. And we'll go into that now. But they didn't do the mission they were sent. But the point he's trying to make, and that the Ema Bana Mismecha is trying to quote from him, is it was important to try to not only go because, okay, listen, we got to go, we can't stay in the desert, but because to go to try to make it exciting, make it something that they want to do. Just in the same way, and this is so important in so many areas of life, in our marriages, in our relationships with our kids. I'm thinking about that sometimes. I know some families who that when they're training the kids to do Torah things, okay, we have to do this and we have to do that, and got to do. And there's other families who make it very important to have the kids want to do everything, make it exciting, make it enjoyable, they celebrate what when the kids do something, have a good tour of thought, or are trying. They're trying to instill an excitement, a passion, a desire about that. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do Shavuos night, to show that we're excited about it, to show that we're not just going to go to sleep the night before, and show that it's something that we're looking forward to, and to try to put into our heads a little bit this idea of just like a kala doesn't go to sleep the night before, she gets ready, right, etc. But she should go to sleep because she has a big day ahead. But I mean, the point is that as much as possible to try to elicit this, and that's how we should feel about Eretz Yisrael, and feel about how lucky we are, how fortunate we are, how we're not, be here just because we have to be, and because we didn't have anywhere else to go. And you think about that today, because a lot of the arguments today, and I've made that argument, many people have, okay, in America now with all the rise of anti-Semitism and everything going on, I got this a few times this week. One of the shuls in Forest Hills had swastikas on it. The shul I've been in many times.
I wondered if it was yours.
No, but down the street. Our Shimshon's bar mitzvah was in that shul, these things are going on more and more and more. So we argue, why are people still staying in America, or why So they think even another thing this week was the mayor of New York now is the last announcement, he's not going to march in the Israel Day parade. It's like unheard of.
What a surprise.
Yeah, who needs him there? But still, right? But so people are learning their lesson and moving to Lakewood and moving to Florida and moving whatever, right? So we all see that people should feel, but we don't want people to come here just because they have to. Because when it's going to get really bad, people should want to come. They should understand what they're missing here, how wonderful, what an opportunity we have, and that's something that we should have. So the Eimon Banu Smecha quoted that briefly, and then he says towards the end over there, and this is starting on the line, started at about 8 lines up. The first word on the line is Rabbah, and in the middle of the line it says Nimtza. We see Im anu rotzim letakin zos. If we want to fix this attitude, Muchrachim anu lahashlim atom ashechasu az. We have to do something that they didn't have then. which is lasot pa'alim la'orer ahava v'chemda bilvavot yam bein Yisrael. We have to do actions to try to arouse the desire and love for Eretz Yisrael in the hearts of other Jews. B'chol makom Moshe saying, wherever they live, lios choshkim b'chomdim la'eretz chemda shel avaseinu, that they should want the wonderful land of our forefathers, v'yesh tikva v'yesh tikva, and light a fire in them. Lavola lirasha ta'aretz kedushah, to come and grab the land. V'yachmedu eileha yoser mikol chemda sheba'olam, and to want it more than any other thing in the world. Zeh yihiyeh hatikun hasholem, that will be the great tikkun for that tremendous kilkul. Uv'zeh yifra hachov hayashan she'asinu az, and that will fix the bad thing that they did then. Berosh heyoseinu l'am, when we first became a people. Ve'mimaleinu kol kach ad hayom hazen, we were suffering still from that still today. But tzoros v'chavolos shonos v'kabus, that we have many tzoros. Ad shekimat avadnu, until we're almost lost, and especially talking in his time as the Holocaust became more and more evident. Chas v'sholom, v'vasusenu tikkun hanal, if we do this tikkun, yufsak achov, maybe that will go away. V'yikra hastar me'aleinu, and we won't have this thing holding over us. And Yom Yeshua yavo lanu b'tefila gedola b'mala yechida, and we'll have a great Yeshua together. Zeh hayom shekivinu lo nilgilu v'nismacha b'Yeshua self, and that the Yeshua will come. So that's a beautiful quote from him. I'm not going to read it inside. On the other side, I'll just tell you what it is in that box there. There's a quote from the Shloah Kadosh, who writes on Shavuot. He talks about how that it wasn't just that the Beis Yosef and the Maggid were there, but in fact, Rav Shlomo Alkabetz writes that we were all there and we heard, that the Maggid said this thing, and we stood there and we were said together, and we felt like on Yom Kippur we yelled out Baruch Shem Kod Malchuso, and we thought Ashrechem, how wonderful it is, and he says. He said to us, Alu Eretz Yisrael, come up to Eretz Yisrael. And they said, Yashrecha b'ni. That's a very interesting thing. He was talking to a couple of people who lived in Tzvat. What do you mean, go up to Eretz Yisrael? Right? So obviously, you can live in Eretz Yisrael and you can live in Eretz Yisrael. Right? And you can it meant, even in such a Chevraya Kadisha like they had in Tzvat, there's more and more that you could do and appreciate it in the special kedushah and the special avira and the special ruchnius that there's in Eretz Yisrael. Certainly something for us to learn about that, how wonderful it is and how beautiful it is and how much we can appreciate it, that some great things will happen and so great that it'll be almost like an olam haba, like the time what we look forward to when the birch trees have fruit on them. That's, it'll just become a more and more spiritual place. And we should appreciate it. So, and how they all cried out of the Grove Simcha of when they heard this thing. So I guess just to conclude, it's when we learn about the great blessings that are promised for us, you could look at it just as good things will happen if we keep the Torah, bad things will happen if we don't keep the Torah. But he's trying to make it a whole other level over here, which is not just that good things will happen, bad things happen. Is what do we really want? What do we want, particularly in our Torah lives, particularly in our Eretz Yisrael lives, and that we should appreciate the tremendous privilege that we have, and that we should want to have it. And I mean, again, you think of Rav Teichtalin with all that tremendous longing and passion, and how he himself never got here, how tragic that is, but how lucky we are and fortunate we are, and how we tend to take for granted and we get annoyed by the Bituach Leumi and everybody else, but we have to remember that in the big picture, we have to do what we can to always remind ourselves what a blessing it is that we are able to be here, particularly, of course, in this wonderful home. And thank you for hosting us always. And it's Hashem Shalom Kedim B'Meher V'Yameinu.
Amen.